Ethan Clark sat alone in the station's observation lounge, a warm cup of tea between his hands. The glass wall in front of him stretched from floor to ceiling, showing the slow swirl of the Azure Drift Nebula outside. The colors shifted with every second, blue clouds folding into purple, streaks of silver lightning weaving through them. He had studied space all his life, but scenes like this still left him quiet and thoughtful. He noticed movement in the far corner. An alien woman stood there, her head slightly lowered, as if she did not want to be noticed. She was slender, her skin patterned with faint crystalline shapes that caught the nebula's light. Delicate frilled edges traced along her jaw and neck, shimmering faintly. She did not look like any human, but there was something about the way the light touched her that made Ethan look twice. She seemed to hesitate before stepping closer to the glass. Her hands, long-fingered and gentle, rested against the railing. She kept her eyes down, as though she were afraid to meet the gaze of anyone in the lounge. Ethan felt a quiet pull to speak to her. He set his tea down, stood, and approached slowly so as not to startle her. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" he asked, his voice calm. She glanced at him for only a second before returning her gaze to the nebula. "Yes," she said softly. Her voice had a faint echo to it, as though it carried more than one tone at once. "It is ... comforting." He smiled gently. "I'm Ethan. I work with the xenobiology team on the human vessel Horizon."
"Are you here with one of the delegations?"
"My name is Lyraya," she said, still watching the drifting clouds outside.
"I am a translator for the Ilari trade envoy."
She paused, then added,
"I do not usually spend time in public areas."
"Why not?"
Ethan asked, though he kept his tone light, not pressing.
Lyraya's shoulders lifted slightly. "Humans, they have a different idea of beauty. I do not match it." Each word was spoken without bitterness, but also without hope. Ethan studied her expression. The light from the nebula reflected off her crystalline patterns, scattering tiny sparkles across her cheeks. He found himself thinking that human standards seemed very small compared to this. "I think," he said slowly, "beauty isn't just one thing. You can see the same nebula 1,000 times, and it will never be the same twice. That's what makes it beautiful." She looked at him for a moment, uncertain how to respond. Then her gaze returned to the glass wall. "You are kind," she said quietly. They stood in silence for a while, watching the slow movement of colors outside. After some time, Lyraya asked, "Are you studying the nebula?" "In a way," Ethan replied. "My team is collecting samples from nearby microasteroids. The particles are reacting strangely to radiation from the nebula. We think it could lead to better hull materials." She nodded, showing interest. "The Ilari once used minerals from similar regions to make our ceremonial armor. It is both strong and beautiful." She hesitated at the last word. Ethan's curiosity grew. "Maybe you could tell me more about it sometime. I'd like to learn how your people see beauty in materials and shapes. It's different from how humans do." Lyraya shifted slightly, her frills catching more of the light. "Perhaps," she said after a pause. "But not many humans ask such things." "Maybe they should," Ethan said. Lyraya turned her eyes toward him again, studying his face as if trying to read the truth behind his words. There was no mockery there, no insincere smile, only steady interest. "The nebula will pass from view soon," Lyraya said quietly. "The station will rotate. Then we should enjoy it while it lasts," Ethan replied. They stood together until the first edge of the nebula began to drift out of sight. As the colors faded, Lyraya stepped back. "Thank you for speaking with me," she said. "Maybe we'll meet here again," Ethan offered. Lyraya hesitated, then gave a small nod before walking toward the exit. Ethan watched her go, the image of the nebula's light on her crystalline skin still clear in his mind. 2 days later, Ethan found himself walking toward the station's library wing. He had sent a simple message to Lyraya, asking if she would like to share cultural data over tea. To his quiet relief, she had agreed. Now, he carried a small tablet filled with images and sounds from Earth, curious to see how she would react. She was already there when he arrived, sitting at a table near one of the wide viewing panels. Her crystalline skin caught the sunlight filtering through the glass, scattering tiny flecks of light onto the table. She had a small case with her, likely holding data from her own world. "You came," Ethan said with a smile as he sat across from her. Lyraya gave a slight nod. "I was curious. They began with earth music. Ethan played a soft instrumental piece, the kind often heard in open plains at sunset. Lariah tilted her head, her frills moving faintly, as if they were sensing the rhythm. "It feels wide," she said after a moment. "Like standing on a cliff with the wind." "That's a good way to put it," Ethan replied. "This one is from my home region. People listen to it during quiet evenings." Lariah tapped her case, and a gentle, layered sound filled the air. It had no sharp notes, only smooth tones that seemed to echo in the mind. "This is an Ilari dawn song," she explained. "It is sung when the first sun rises over the ice plains." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over him. "It feels peaceful," he said, "and bright, somehow." She seemed pleased by that, a small shift in her posture showing it. Next, they shared images. Ethan showed her photos of Earth's forests, mountains, and oceans. She studied them carefully, asking about the colors and shapes. "So much green," she said. "We have little of that on my world. Our oceans are silver blue, our plants are pale and thin." Lariah then displayed images of her home. Vast icy plains under twin suns, glittering crystal formations, and cities built into the sides of frozen cliffs. Ethan leaned forward, fascinated. "It's beautiful," he said honestly. "Like the whole planet is made of art." Lariah's gaze flickered. "Not all would think so. I have heard humans call it cold and empty." "They're wrong," Ethan said simply. For a while, they talked about food. Ethan described bread, fruits, and roasted meats. Lariah spoke of nutrient crystals, sea leaves, and dishes flavored with frost flowers.
She
Explained how her people saw beauty in the patterns of food, not just the taste. As their talk deepened, Lariah's voice grew softer. "I have not spoken like this with a human before," she admitted. "Many see me and look away. Some traders have laughed, saying I look strange. They think it is harmless, but it stays with you." Ethan felt a quiet weight in her words. "I don't see strange," he said. "I see different, and different can be rare. Rare can be special." She studied him for a moment, as if searching for a hidden meaning. "Are you saying that to be polite?" "No," he replied. "I'm saying it because it's true." Lariah lowered her eyes, unsure how to respond. The faint glimmer of the viewing panel light brushed her features, and Ethan realized he was watching her the same way he had in the lounge, drawn to the way light and shape met in her face. Their meeting lasted longer than either of them planned. They traded more stories, laughed lightly over strange translation errors in each other's languages, and even compared hand gestures that carried very different meanings between their cultures. When the station's automated lights dimmed to mark the approach of evening, Lariah gathered her case. "Thank you for this," she said. "It was not what I expected. I hope that means good," Ethan said with a small smile. "Yes," she replied after a moment. "Good." As she left, Ethan sat for a while longer, thinking about her words and the quiet way she seemed to relax as they spoke. He wondered if she might meet him again, not because of shared duty, but because she wanted to. Ethan was working in the research bay when the first alarm sounded. The deep, steady hum of the station shifted into a sharp, repeating tone that echoed down the corridors. He looked up from his console, his heart tightening. The alert lights began to flash red. He tapped his COM. "Control, what's happening?" "Pirate vessels incoming," a voice answered quickly. "All non-essential personnel, prepare for shelter or evacuation." Ethan's first thought was of Lariah. She had mentioned meeting with her trade envoy that afternoon, which meant she might still be on the civilian level of the station. Without hesitation, he left the research bay and moved through the crowded hallways. People hurried past him toward secure areas, some carrying children, others pulling small cargo cases. The air was filled with low voices, hurried footsteps, and the faint vibration of defense shields powering up. When he reached the main civilian sector, he spotted Lariah near a supply kiosk. She was holding a small data case close to her chest, her frills pressed tight against her neck in a sign of unease. Two strangers stood not far away, both watching her too closely. Ethan recognized the look. Those men were no ordinary evacuees. They were pirates or working with them. He moved toward her without breaking pace. "Lariah," he called softly. Her head turned, relief flashing in her eyes. "Ethan," she said quickly, stepping toward him. "They are here for me. Come with me," he said, taking her arm lightly. We need to get you to a safe place." The men began to move after them, but Ethan guided her into a narrow service corridor before they could close the distance. The station's lighting here was dim, the hum of machinery louder. "Why you?" Ethan asked as they hurried along. Liraya's voice was low. "My crystalline tissue contains rare minerals. Some pirates believe it can be sold for high value." Ethan felt a chill at the thought. "Then we can't let them near you?" They reached a junction where the corridor split into two paths. Ethan chose the left, remembering it led toward the docking bays. A distant echo of boots followed them, but the sound was faint. They had a small lead. As they moved through the shadowed tunnels, Liraya whispered, "I'm not gorgeous like humans. You do not need to risk yourself for me." Ethan glanced at her, his step steady. "This isn't about beauty. You matter, Liraya. That's reason enough." She looked away quickly as though unsure how to hold his gaze. They pushed on, passing storage rooms and maintenance panels. The air grew warmer as they approached the lower bay levels, where shuttle engines and equipment produced constant heat. Ethan checked each corner before leading her through. Suddenly a figure appeared, ahead a tall pirate with a jagged scar across his cheek. He spotted them instantly and shouted for backup. "This way," Ethan urged, pulling Liraya toward a narrow access hatch. They ducked inside, crawling through a low-maintenance conduit lit only by faint strips along the floor. The sound of pursuit grew louder, but the cramped space slowed their pursuers. The conduit opened into a smaller storage chamber. Ethan helped Liraya out first, then sealed the hatch behind them. "We're close to the docking bay now," he said. "If we can reach Shuttle 4, we can get out before they block the exits." Liraya nodded, holding her case tightly. "I can help," she said. "When we are close, I can bend light to distract them." "Bend light?" Ethan asked. "My skin can scatter it in strong bursts. It can blind or confuse for a few seconds," she explained. "That could work," Ethan said, already moving toward the next corridor. As they stepped out, they could hear the faint clang of boots again. The pirates were still behind them, but they were almost at the bay. The smell of coolant and engine fuel was stronger here. They hurried forward, both knowing the next few minutes would decide everything. Ethan and Liraya reached the edge of the docking bay, just as the Station S alarm shifted to a faster tone. The wide chamber was filled with shuttles, cargo crates, and crew members rushing to secure equipment. The sound of voices mixed with the hum of engines warming up. Defense officers were shouting for people to board quickly, but the pirates were close. Ethan could hear them entering the bay from the upper walkway. They had the advantage of height and could cut off the escape if they moved fast. "There," Ethan said, pointing toward a mid-sized shuttle near the far wall. "Shuttle 4. If we reach it, we can leave." Liraya looked toward the upper walkway where the pirates moved along the railing. "They will see us," she warned. "You said you can bend light," Ethan reminded her. Liraya hesitated only a moment before setting her data case down on the floor. She closed her eyes, and the crystalline patterns on her skin began to glow faintly. The light grew brighter until it reflected off every surface around her. Then with a sudden flash, it scattered in sharp bursts that bounced across the bay. The pirates shouted in surprise, shielding their eyes. Some stumbled, their vision overwhelmed by the glare. In that moment, Ethan took Liraya's arm and pulled her forward. They ran across the bay floor, weaving between crates and fuel lines. The temporary blindness of their pursuers gave them the time they needed to reach the Shuttle S open hatch. "Get inside," Ethan urged. Liraya climbed in quickly, grabbing her case on the way. Ethan followed, hitting the panel to seal the hatch. The pilot, a young crewman with steady hands, looked back at them. "Are you cleared to depart? Pirates are in the bay," Ethan said. "Launch now, or we lose the chance." The pilot nodded without question, powering the engines. The shuttle vibrated as the docking clamps released. A moment later, they lifted from the bay floor. Through the small rear viewport, Ethan could see the pirates scrambling to regroup. A few raised weapons, but the shuttle was already turning toward the station's launch corridor. Liraya sat beside him, her breathing quick but controlled. "They will follow," she said. "The station defense forces will be here soon," Ethan replied. "We just have to make it to open space." As the shuttle shot down the launch corridor, the view ahead shifted to the deep black of space. Distant stars sparkled, and the faint blue edge of the nebula was still visible. A few moments later, flashes of light marked the arrival of the station's defense ships. They moved quickly to intercept the pirate vessels still outside. Lyraya watched quietly, her frills relaxing as the danger faded. "You could have left me," she said at last. "You could have gone to safety without risk. I'd spend the rest of my life wondering if you made it out." Ethan shook his head. "No, that's not who I am." She turned her gaze toward him, her crystalline skin catching the shuttle's interior lights. "Many would not think this way." "Then they're missing something important," he said. There was a quiet moment between them, filled only by the low hum of the shuttle. Lyraya seemed to study his face, as if trying to understand why he looked at her without the same measure of judgment she was used to. As the shuttle approached the human vessel horizon, docking lights guided them in. The large ship's hull gleamed under the station's lights, a sign of safety after the tense escape. The docking was smooth. Once the hatch opened, crew members came to greet them, taking quick reports from Ethan and the pilot. Lyraya stayed close to him, still holding her case. When they were finally alone for a moment in the corridor, Ethan glanced at her. "You were incredible back there. Your light trick, it saved us." Lyraya lowered her eyes slightly, but there was the smallest trace of a smile. "You gave me a reason to use it," she said. They walked together toward the guest quarters. Outside, the station's defense forces chased the last of the pirates away. But Ethan's thoughts stayed with the image of Lyraya in the docking bay, light bright, determined, and unforgettable. Lyraya stood near the large viewport of the human vessel horizon, looking out at the quiet stretch of space. The nebula was far behind them now, replaced by the slow drift of distant stars. The hum of the ship felt steady and calm compared to the chaos of the station. She could still hear echoes of the alarms in her mind, but the danger was gone. What remained was a strange sense of safety, something she had not felt in many years. It was not just the ship, it was the presence of someone who had chosen to stay beside her when others might have walked away. Ethan approached, holding 2 mugs of hot tea. "Thought you might like this," he said. She accepted it with both hands. The warmth seeped into her fingers. "Thank you," she said. "The captain says you can stay as long as you need," Ethan told her. "There's a spare guest room not far from mine. If you want, I can help you meet the crew." Lyraya hesitated. "I am not comfortable around many humans," she admitted. "You don't have to do it all at once," Ethan said. "Just when you feel ready." They stood quietly, sipping tea and watching the stars. After a while, Lyraya asked, "Why do you look at me the way you do?" Ethan glanced at her. "What way is that?" "As if you were trying to find something," she said. "As if there is something worth seeing, because there is," Ethan replied. "You've been told you don't match human beauty, but that doesn't matter to me. I see someone strong enough to walk into a room even when she feels out of place. I see someone who saved my life back there in the bay." Lyraya's eyes shifted away, but there was a softness in her voice. "No one has said things like that to me before." "Maybe they should have," Ethan said. In the days that followed, Lyraya began to explore the ship a little more. She met a few members of the crew, engineers, medics, and navigators. At first, she spoke only in short replies, but the more time she spent near Ethan, the more she seemed willing to stay. One afternoon, she joined Ethan in the lab. He showed her samples from the micro-asteroids they had collected, explaining how the particles reacted to radiation. Lyraya compared them to the minerals on her homeworld, adding details he had never read in human databases. Together, they filled pages of notes. When they took a break, Lyraya glanced at the reflection of herself in a polished console. For a long time, she had avoided mirrors and smooth surfaces. Now, she studied the way the light caught her crystalline patterns. They still looked strange to her, but maybe not as much as before. "What are you thinking?" Ethan asked. "That I do not look the way humans expect," she said. "But maybe that is not a bad thing." "I'd say it's a good thing," Ethan replied, with a small smile. Their connection grew, built on quiet talks, shared work, and the unspoken trust formed during the escape. Lyraya no longer kept her head lowered when walking through the corridors. She still avoided crowds, but when she spoke, her voice carried more steadiness. On the 7th day, they stood together in the observation deck, as the horizon prepared to enter a new star system. The view ahead was filled with golden light from a nearby sun. "Will you return to your trade envoy soon?" Ethan asked. Lyraya was silent for a moment. "Not yet," she said. "I wish to stay." For a while, As a liaison, perhaps. To learn more about humans, Ethan nodded. I'd like that. As the ship moved forward, Lyraya looked at her reflection in the glass. The stars made tiny sparks across her features, and for the first time, she saw something other than strangeness. She saw herself as she was, and maybe as Ethan saw her too. He stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Neither spoke, but the quiet between them was warm. Outside, the golden light grew brighter, and the horizon carried them toward whatever came next.